Mike Moore Media, the first place to hear Rockingham County news and information.
Our program is originating from Rockingham Community College with President Dr. Mark Kinlaw and Sheila Regan, Vice President for Academic Affairs. Mark and Sheila, hello and welcome to the program.
Thank you, Mike. It's good to be on again.
Good morning. Thank you.
Well, we have a number of things to talk about. Let's start, Mark, with what's happening on campus. RCC is open. Operations continue, but a number of changes. So just bring us up to date on where we are.
Okay, I'll be glad to. Of course, back in mid-March, in fact, March the 23rd, we had to flip all of our classes, as many as we could, to an online format. And we were still given the authority to do some classes face-to-face, but eventually we had to shut those down as well. And so our faculty worked really hard to convert their classes from face-to-face to online. Now, some of those courses were already online, which was fine, but we had to convert quite a few of them. And so the faculty worked really hard to get that done. And then at the same time, as the governor issued his stay-at-home orders, and he's had several of those. Well, he had his original one, but then he's extended it, and of course has since let that pass on May the 22nd. But once he issued stay-at-home orders, then we began to work on a teleworking agreement here on campus, and so our board approved all of that, and so we began to put those things in place, and then our IT department had to work really hard to get computers ready to be taken home by staff and faculty. They had already been working on that with faculty, and so that was put in place. And so since that time, a lot of our staff have been working from home, and all of our faculty have been working from home. So we have been doing that for really the better part of 2 months. And now that the governor has lifted his stay-at-home order and is beginning to relax some of his restrictions, we are beginning to look at phasing out or beginning to wean people off of teleworking. So we're not quite there yet, but we're beginning to work on it. So that's a lot of what we've had to do. Our distance learning department has worked really well to support our faculty, as has our IT department, and it's really worked pretty well for us.
Good.
It's not quite like having people at work. We're doing a lot of Zoom meetings and conference calls, and it's just a different style of work, but that's what we've been doing.
Yeah. Zoom seems to be the hot word now, doesn't it?
Yeah, that's true.
And, we all have those important dates in our lives. March 23rd, I guess, will always be there for you because that's when it all changed so quickly.
It really did. For us, it did. And I'm sure Sheila, at some point during the program, is going to talk to you a lot about what this means from an instruction standpoint and how all that's going. But summer school started on May the 20th. And that is going very well for us. We're still mostly in an online format, although there are certain areas where we are doing face-to-face because we have the authority from our community college system to do it. And the fact that the governor has relaxed some of his restrictions allows us to do some as well. But our summer enrollment is up 16.12%. Which is really fantastic considering that we have been able to do very little face-to-face student interaction to get them registered. So we've done really well for the summer, and so that's good for us, and now we're beginning to shift to the fall. And as we shift to the fall, there is a lot that we have on the table. In fact, our senior staff, we're meeting at 9 o'clock this morning to begin to talk a lot more about what's the fall going to look like? And, of course, universities and colleges across the country are trying to get ready for it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, congratulations on that 16.12% enrollment increase for some. That's great. That's good news.
It is, and we did really well with university students. We target them when they're home. The fact that they were home a little earlier than normal gave us a chance to do some marketing to try to get them to take courses with us in the summer that they can transfer back to their university, and they can do that, of course, with us. It's a lot cheaper. And so we did pretty well with that group, but we're pleased with our summer enrollment.
Very nice. Well, Sheila, let's turn to you, and if you could give us an update, please, on the impact that COVID-19 has had on instruction, and understand there's some new temporary grading things in place as well.
Correct. So March 23rd was an important date in our lives, but the mandate to cease all face-to-face instruction was March 31st. So our faculty had very little time to prepare for this 100% transition. We were allowed to continue face-to-face in health science programs and public safety programs as long as we could get the ambulance ride time and clinical time in the hospitals. Now, eventually, that ceased in mid-April. So we had to make a lot of adjustments to finish those students. But I'm pleased to say that all of our health science programs were able to finish in May as scheduled, and they are scheduled to take their certification exams to go to work. So all of our nurses, for example, are registered for the NCLEX in the next 2 weeks and should be ready for work.
Okay, that's more good news.
Yeah, that's very good.
Yeah.
So in terms of grading, another important date, March 13th was the week that we went on spring break. And so we used that date as our threshold for all students who were engaged and passing their course at that point and continued through the semester. If they were not successful at the end and could demonstrate that they were impacted by COVID, of course, everyone was, mind you, if they elected to withdraw the last week of the semester, we allowed them to do that, and we gave them a WE, which is a withdrawal emergency. The other option we gave students, if they were very close to meeting the learning outcomes of the course and just had a few things left, we gave them an incomplete emergency grade, an IE grade, and we extended the time for them to finish that incomplete. We gave them a year compared to 6 weeks, which was our normal policy. So the neat thing about the WE grade is that students, when they're ready to repeat that course, it's tuition free to them this summer, fall, and next spring. And then students have until next spring to complete the IE grade.
So you've really given them some extension there. That's very helpful, I'm sure, to everyone.
Oh, absolutely. In fact, in our technical programs like machining and welding, more than 75% of those students have completed their incomplete work, and they have a final course grade now.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
Mike, this has been really hard on students because, especially in rural areas like ours, high-speed internet access is a big issue. Yeah. And so it was difficult for some students to continue their work just simply because they don't have the internet access at home. And so this is something that's being discussed even at the state level going forward. If we want to be in a better position to serve students in the future, whether there's a pandemic or not, there has to be something done to improve the high-speed internet access for rural areas in our state, because that is really an issue.
And that's been an issue for some time.
It has.
Yeah.
And Mike, the other thing we learned is that if the family had internet access and had a device to do online work, because K-12 school, it was homeschooling, there was one device for a family of 4, 5, or 6. And so a lot of our students, one, had to withdraw to do the homeschool for their children and share the device so their children could do their public schoolwork.
Wow. Challenging, to say the least.
absolutely.
Yeah. And I know there are some emergency funds available to help students, too, with the CARES program. And I think checks maybe are going out tomorrow, direct deposit and all of that this week.
Yes, the CARES Act funding, of course, all universities and colleges in the country receive some level of funding from the CARES Act. And there's really three different pieces of this, Mike. The first piece is the emergency student aid. Now, every college and university received a certain amount of money from the CARES Act. At least 50% of it had to be spent on emergency student aid. And so that was the first amount of money that we could request, and that there was a process put in place where we had to request the funds, and so we did that, and we have received those funds. Those funds do not go through our community college system. They are deposited directly into what's called our G5 account, which is where we draw federal funds from. Mm-hmm. And so we have requested those funds. We have received them. And we had to create a way of distributing those funds. And this has really been interesting. And of course, the federal government, the Department of Education, had to set up some criteria for the funds, which they did. But there was so much of it left up to interpretation that we had to really dig in and get some answers on how we could spend that money and what students were eligible. So we had to develop a formula for distributing those funds, and there was a lot of flexibility in that. So, in other words, we may come up with a way of distributing those funds a little differently than another college. But as long as we had a logical way of distributing those funds and make sure we met the criteria and the parameters set forth by the Department of Education, we're okay. But we have to report on those funds 30 days after receiving them, and then every 45 days after that until those funds are spent, and we have 1 year to spend the money. So we have developed that formula. We based ours on the number of credit hours that students were taking. And so obviously the more credit hours that students were signed up for, then the more that they could receive. So we have developed that. We have started distributing the funds. We had an initial deadline of May the 11th, and then we set another deadline for June the 5th, and we'll probably set another deadline pretty soon. We created an application process, and students had to complete the FAFSA, and so all of that is in place and is working well. I think as of last week, we had already received enough applications to distribute more than $150,000. So our piece of the emergency funds for us were a little over $466,000. So that's one pot of the money. The second big pot, they're called institutional funds, and those are monies that can be used to help with what they call the disruption of services due to COVID-19. So we're able to spend some of those, for example, on if we had to buy more computers to help with teleworking, if we had to buy more computers to help with online instruction, if we had to buy additional software, those types of things we can use these institutional funds to do. If we had to buy additional servers to help with maintaining our system, we could use it for that. Plus, we're already in the process of purchasing protective shields on campus and we can talk a little bit more of what we're thinking about with facilities in just a minute, but we can use those funds to provide some of those protective shields like you're seeing at grocery stores and so forth. Mm-hmm. And then any sanitizing supplies, those types of things, we can use the institutional funds to help with. And so that's the second set of funds, and for us that was about $466,000. Then the third set of funds, because we are a college with a Title III federal grant with the Department of Education, we're in the 5th year of that grant that's focused on distance education, we were eligible for additional funds, and we got a little over $45,000, and there's a lot of flexibility with those funds, but I think we're going to end up using them to help with student aid. So and you can use some of the institutional funds for emergency student aid. So those are the three sets of funds that we had to request them